I stood in the center of the kitchen with sugar and flour dusting my hands from the final wedding cake trial when my phone vibrated against the counter. It was a voice memo clocked at exactly 58 seconds. I tapped play expecting an apology for missing dinner, but instead I heard his voice discussing me like a secured loan. When he laughed that soft, familiar laugh, I knew the truth immediately. He did not love me. He was purchasing me. My name is Haley Grant, and at 31 years old, I thought I had secured the final piece of a perfect life. Standing in the granite and chrome kitchen of the Pittsburgh townhouse Ethan and I had just leased, I was surrounded by the debris of wedding planning. Mini quiches cooled on the counter, and samples of buttercream frosting smeared my fingertips. It was the week before the wedding. The air smelled of vanilla and expensive decisions. I wiped my hands on a paper towel when my phone lit up against the backsplash. It was a notification from Ethan. Not a text message, but a voice memo file sent via iMessage. The label read, "For Bree Quick Update." My thumb hovered over the screen. He must have tapped my name by mistake instead of his sister's. I assumed it was about the rehearsal dinner seating chart, or perhaps a complaint about the florist bill. With hands still damp from washing off the sugar, I pressed play. The sound blared through the speaker, echoing off the empty high ceilings of the kitchen we had not fully furnished yet. "She will sign it. Trust me." Ethan's voice cut through the room. It was casual and relaxed. It was the voice he used when he was closing a deal, not the voice he used when he told me he loved me. Haley always wants to be the good person. You just have to push the family angle hard. I froze. The paper towel crumpled in my fist. He continued speaking to his sister. "Tell her mom is stressed about the venue costs. Make her feel like she's saving us. Once she signs that co-signer agreement for the bridge loan, we are clear." My stomach dropped. He was not talking about venue costs. He was talking about the commercial loan he swore his parents had covered. But then came the sound that made the room spin. It was a laugh. Not Ethan's laugh, but a woman's high, bright giggle in the background. "You are terrible," the female voice said. I recognized it instantly. Tessa Hallbrook, his work wife and colleague who was supposed to be at a conference in Philly. "I am pragmatic," Ethan replied, and I could hear the clink of glass against glass. They were drinking. "Look, she is a starter wife. Perfect for the credit score repair and the public image rehab. Give it 2 or 3 years. Get the assets legalized, and then we move on. She is just the necessary step. Starter wife." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I stared at the timestamp. Sent 2 minutes ago. He was supposed to be at a late client meeting. Then the audio shifted as if the phone was being passed or moved, and Bree's voice came through recorded earlier, or perhaps she was there on speaker too. Her tone was sharp and commanding. "Just make sure you delete the signing appointment from the shared calendar. She checks that thing like a hawk. Do not let her see the lawyer's name." The memo ended. The silence that followed was louder than the recording. I did not scream. I did not throw the phone. I slid down the cabinet doors until I hit the cold tile floor. My legs simply stopped working. I sat there in the silence, staring at the stainless steel refrigerator we had picked out together. I replayed the phrase in my mind. Starter wife. He was not marrying me. He was acquiring me. He was leveraging my clean credit history and my naive trust to underwrite a debt I knew nothing about. The tears I expected did not come. Instead, a strange physical sensation washed over me. It started at the base of my neck and spread downward, cooling my blood. It was the sensation of clarity. The grief was there, but it was locked behind a wall of sudden ice. I looked at the phone screen. The file was still there. For Bree, quick update. I took a deep breath. The Haley who baked trial cakes and worried about napkin colors died on that kitchen floor. The Haley who rose to her feet was the senior risk analyst for a data compliance firm. I knew how to track liabilities. I knew how to mitigate damage. And I knew exactly how to document a disaster. Okay. I whispered to the empty room. You want to play games. I tapped the screen. I saved the audio file not to my photos, but to the hidden secure drive I used for sensitive work documents. I forwarded a copy to an encrypted email address I had not used since college. Then I opened my laptop and created a new folder. I did not name it Wedding or Ethan. I typed 2 words, G file. My hands were steady now. I locked the screen and walked to the window looking out at the dark Pittsburgh street. He wanted a starter wife. He was about to find out exactly how I finished things. Looking back through the lens of that 58-second voice memo, the last 18 months rearranged themselves into a completely different picture. I met Ethan at a fundraising gala for the city library system. He was standing near the bar wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my first car, looking utterly miserable. He had leaned in close to me, smelling of cedar and expensive scotch, and whispered a secret. "I hate this pageantry," he had said, his voice low and intimate. "I just want a real life. No cameras, no social climbers, just real connection." I fell for it. I fell for it because I was tired of the Pittsburgh dating scene where men assessed my net worth before asking my last name. Ethan seemed like a miracle. He was the heir to a logistics dynasty who claimed he wanted a simple existence. He proposed after only 5 months. He called it fate. I called it a whirlwind. Now, sitting on my kitchen floor. I called it a timeline for acquisition. The warning signs were there, buried under layers of charm and strategic gifts. They started when I met the Caldwell women. His mother, Diane, was a woman who smiled with her mouth but never her eyes. During our first lunch at the club, she had patted my hand with fingers cold as ice. "You are lucky, dear," Diane had said, sipping her iced tea. "Not many girls from your background get to step into a family like ours. We have expectations." His sister, Bree, was sharper, like a knife wrapped in silk. She treated me less like a future sister-in-law and more like a temporary intern. "Try not to embarrass us at the gala," she would say with a laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "We have a brand to uphold." Ethan played the mediator perfectly. He slowly isolated me from my support system, frame by frame. When my best friend questioned why everything was moving so fast, Ethan sighed, looking wounded. "They are just jealous." "Haley," he had said, stroking my hair. "They do not have what we have. Why share our private business? Keep it. Keep it between us." And I did. I pulled away from my friends to comfort him. Then came the paperwork. It was always urgent, always presented when I was busy or distracted. A venue contract here, a vendor agreement there. Then, the financial documents started sliding into the stack. A joint account application, a change of address form. I remembered one evening 3 weeks ago clearly. Ethan placed a thick stack of papers on the dining table while I was grading risk assessment models on my laptop. "Just sign these. Quickly," he said, tapping the bottom of the page. "It is just standard banking stuff for the wedding accounts. The deadline is at 5 o'clock. I had paused, reaching for my reading glasses. "Let me read them first." Ethan. I never sign things blindly. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The warm, loving fiancé vanished. Ethan dropped his pen. "Haley," he said, his voice thick with disappointment. Do you not trust me after everything?" Diane, who had been visiting, looked up from her magazine with a scoff. "Oh, for heaven's sake, use your head. Paranoid women are so exhausting." "Just sign the papers." I signed because I did not want to be the paranoid woman. I signed because I wanted to be the easy, trusting wife. Then there was Tessa Halbrook, the work sister, the woman whose laugh I had just heard on the recording. Ethan brought her to dinners, claiming they had to discuss business strategy. "Tessa understands the pressure I am under," Ethan would say when I asked why she was texting him at 10 at night. "She really does know him better than you do." Bree had joked at my bridal shower, loud enough for half the room to hear. Office wives are the real wives, right?" They all laughed. I had laughed too, feeling a knot in my stomach. The greatest irony was that they were playing me for a fool because they assumed I was one. When I met Ethan, I was vague about my career. I told them I worked in data analysis and let them believe I was a low-level clerk. I hid my title as senior risk analyst at Blackford Integrity Group. I hid my salary. I hid my investments. I did it to avoid men who wanted me for my money. Instead, my modesty made the Caldwells think I was desperate and destitute. They thought I was weak. They thought I was poor. I stood up from the floor, walking to the desk in the living room. I opened the drawer where Ethan kept our important files. It was empty of the real documents, but I found the folder labeled Wedding Prep. Inside, clipped neatly to the front, were color scans of my passport, my birth certificate, and my Social Security card. I need these. To book the honeymoon tickets. He had told me a month ago, "I will keep them safe." He was not booking tickets. He was building an identity kit. He had everything he needed to become me. I stared at my own face in the photocopy, realizing that the man I slept next to had been harvesting my life piece by piece. I sat at the mahogany dining table with my noise-canceling headphones on. The house was silent, but inside my ears the betrayal was deafening. I played the 58-second clip 4 times. I did not listen to the cruelty this time. I listened to the data. I opened a blank document on my secure laptop and transcribed every word. I highlighted the terms that made my professional skin crawl: cosigner, bridge loan, closing, liability. In the context of a wedding, the word closing usually referred to our new home purchase. But placed next to bridge loan, it meant something else entirely. It meant debt restructuring. The Caldwell family business was bleeding, and they needed a tourniquet. I was not the bride. I was the tourniquet. I minimized the audio file and opened our shared digital calendar. I needed to cross-reference the data. Tomorrow night was marked family dinner at Mom's. Immediately following that block was a vague entry titled Quick Errands. That was the window. Ethan had left his iPad on the coffee table charging. He was arrogant with his security because he thought I was technologically illiterate. I bypassed his simple 4-digit passcode, which was just his birthday, and went straight to his photos. He was lazy. He took screenshots of things he needed to remember instead of saving the documents. I scrolled past photos of us smiling at the vineyard until I found it. It was a screenshot of an email from a law firm called Ketter and Wren LLP. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands remained steady. The subject line read, "Draft for review assignment of liability." The date for signing was set for Friday morning. It was scheduled for the day before the wedding. They intended to trap me when I was most vulnerable, distracted by rehearsal dinners and family arrivals. I moved to the shared laptop on the kitchen island. I did not look at the inbox. I went straight to the spam folder where he likely thought the notifications would go unnoticed. There it was. A notification from a credit monitoring bureau stamped 3 days ago. Inquiry alert, soft pull initiated by Caldwell Holdings. They were checking my creditworthiness without my permission to see how much debt I could carry. This was not a marriage proposal. It was a hostile takeover of my financial identity. The urge to smash the iPad was visceral, but I suppressed it. Destruction is not defense. Documentation is defense. I took photos of the screen with my phone. I exported the voice memo and the screenshots to an encrypted USB drive I kept in my work bag. Then I uploaded everything to a secure cloud storage account under a pseudonym and emailed the files to a brand new email address I created on the spot. Triangulated backups. If they wiped my phone, the evidence would still exist in the cloud. If they hacked the cloud, I had the physical drive. I established a new operating rule. No more reactions, only collection. From this second forward, every interaction had to be timestamped and verified. I would not confront them with tears. I would confront them with a timeline. I walked to the hallway mirror. My face was pale and my eyes were red-rimmed. That would not do. I splashed cold water on my face and tied my hair back. I stared at my reflection, practicing the smile of a woman who was just stressed about seeding charts. I tilted my head, practicing the naive look they expected to see. I am just so tired from the planning, I whispered to the glass, testing the tremor in my voice. I trust you. Completely. The lie tasted like ash, but the woman in the mirror looked perfectly, tragically compliant. I was ready for dinner. The morning sun was just beginning to cut through the blinds, but the light did not bring warmth. It only illuminated the crime scene that was my digital life. I sat at the kitchen island with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. I started making calls. I dialed the customer service line for our home insurance provider. I kept my voice flat and professional. I am just calling to verify the payment source for the policy. I said to the representative. I noticed a discrepancy. One moment. Ma'am. The agent chirped. Okay. The premium of $2,400 was paid in full yesterday. The source is a checking account ending in 4589. I hung up without saying goodbye. 4589. That was the joint account number. The one Ethan told me was for household groceries and petty cash. The one I deposited 70% of my paycheck into every month while he contributed a token $500. He was paying for assets solely in his name using my money. I pulled up the invoice from our wedding planner. The deposit for the floral arrangements was $15,000. I scanned the bottom of the page, paid via card ending in 4589. He had made a grand speech about paying for the flowers himself to give me the wedding of my dreams. He had paid for my dream wedding with my own salary. I felt a bile rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I dug deeper into his synchronized cloud folders. In a subfolder nested 3 layers deep, I found a PDF titled Draft Prenuptial Addendum. I opened it. It was legal jargon dense and intentionally confusing, but I parsed it instantly. Clause 14 stated that the spouse-me agreed to assume joint liability for any and all future business obligations incurred by Caldwell Holdings. I scrolled down to the ownership section. My equity share in Caldwell Holdings was listed as 0%. Then I saw the signature page. The witness line was already filled out. Sarah Jenkins. I knew that name. Sarah was Bree's college roommate. She was a notary public in downtown Pittsburgh. They did not just plan to pressure me into signing. They had a notary ready to notarize a document I had not even seen yet. They were going to ambush me. I kept clicking. I found an email confirmation from Delta Airlines. The subject line was, "Your trip to Cabo San Lucas." The dates were for this coming weekend, the exact weekend of my bachelorette party. Ethan had told me he had a last-minute work crisis in Chicago. I opened the passenger list. 2 adults, Ethan Caldwell and Tessa Hallbrook. You, absolute bastard, I whispered to the screen. He was not going to Chicago to work. He was taking his mistress on a vacation paid for with the miles accrued on my credit card while I sat in a hotel room wearing a sash that said, Bride-to-be. I opened a spreadsheet named Family Budget 2026. It was a master plan for the Caldwell family finances. I scrolled past the rows for mortgage and country club dues until I found row 42. It did not say wife's income or Haley's salary. It read simply, Haley loan cover. I was not a person to them. I was a line item. I was a revenue stream designed to service their bad debt. I switched tabs to LinkedIn and searched for Tessa Hallbrook. Her profile popped up. She was not just a sales associate as Ethan had claimed. Her title was Senior Account Manager. High-risk asset transfers. A cold realization washed over me. She was not just sleeping with him. She was the insider. She was the one who knew how to move the debt from their books onto mine. My phone pinged with a final discovery. I had logged into the Postal Service website to track my RSVPs. Instead, I found a pending request, change of address. It authorized all mail under the name Haley Grant to be forwarded to a post office box in Sewickley. I checked the owner of the box, Bree Caldwell. They were redirecting my mail. They wanted to hide the bank notices, the credit inquiries, and the loan approvals so I would never see them until it was too late. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. This was not a wedding. It was a hostile takeover. They had wrapped a financial crime in a white dress and expected me to say, "I do." "Okay," I said, my voice trembling with a rage so cold it burned. "If you want my signature, come and get it." The drive to Diane's estate in Sewickley felt less like a family visit and more like a summons to court. The dining room was dimly lit by a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than my entire college education. We sat at a table long enough to host a summit, and the silence between courses was heavy enough to crush bone. The air conditioner was set so low that goosebumps rose on my arms, but I knew better than to ask for the temperature to change. Diane placed her wine glass down with a sharp click that echoed in the room. She looked at me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "You know, it really is quite quaint," Diane said, tilting her head. "Insisting on reading the wedding contracts yourself instead of just letting our family attorney handle it. It is so working class." I gripped my fork tighter. I forced a smile. "I just like to understand what I am signing." "Diane," Bree laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. "She acts like she is a lawyer. It is adorable, as if she would find something our team missed." Ethan sat next to me. He was playing the role of the benevolent peacekeeper, but under the table his hand found mine. It was not a hold of comfort. He squeezed my fingers together hard enough to grind the knuckles. It was a warning. "Haley just likes to be thorough," Ethan said to his mother, his voice smooth but his grip tightening painfully. "But she knows we only have her best interests at heart." "Right. Honey," I looked at him. His eyes were cold. "Right," I managed to say. Bree swirled her red wine, staring at the dark liquid. "You are lucky." "Haley. Ethan has a habit of saving damsels. Remember Sarah? That poor girl he helped a few years ago. She was so grateful, until she wasn't. We had to cut her loose. Everyone is replaceable if they do not appreciate the generosity of this family." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Be grateful or be gone. Diane reached under her chair and produced a thick manila folder. She slid it across the polished mahogany table toward me. It stopped just inches from my plate. "Speaking of generosity," Diane said briskly, "these are just some insurance updates for the wedding venue and the new house. Minor liability waivers. Sign them now so we do not have to worry about it tomorrow. I know how overwhelmed you get." I looked at the folder. I did not need to open it to know it contained the assignment of liability I had seen in the email draft. They were trying to ambush me over roast beef and expensive wine. I rubbed my temple, feigning a sudden wave of exhaustion. "I am so sorry. Diane, I have such a migraine from the planning. I cannot focus on legal text right now. I will take it home and sign it first thing in the morning." The temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Ethan released my hand and slammed his napkin onto the table. "For God's sake, Haley!" he snapped, the charming mask slipping for a fraction of a second. "It is just standard paperwork. You are making this into such a big deal for no reason. Just sign the damn paper." "I said I will sign it later," I said softly, keeping my voice trembling just enough to sound weak rather than defiant. Before he could escalate, a phone buzzed loudly against the wood. It was Ethan's. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. He tried to hide it, but I saw the caller ID. "Tessa FaceTime." He stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "I have to take this. It is the caterer." He walked out to the foyer, but he did not close the door fully. The acoustics in the grand hallway were perfect. I strained my ears while slicing a piece of meat I had no intention of eating. "Why are you calling now?" I heard him hiss. Then a pause. "What do you mean? The bank moved the deadline I thought we had until Friday." Another pause. His voice rose, tight with panic. "I am trying. She is being difficult. I will get the signature tonight. Just stall them for For 12 hours. He walked back into the room a minute later, looking flushed. He sat down and gave me a tight, predatory smile. "Sorry about that," he said. "Just a minor issue with the champagne delivery." I looked at him and smiled back. It was the best acting performance of my life. "Is everything okay?" "Perfect," he said. "Everything is perfect." I excused myself to use the restroom. As soon as I locked the heavy oak door behind me, I leaned against the marble sink and looked at my reflection. My heart was pounding, but my mind was crystal clear. They were desperate. The bank had moved the deadline. They needed my signature within 24 hours, or their house of cards would collapse. They were not powerful. They were drowning, and they needed me to be their life raft. I reapplied my lipstick, staring into my own eyes. "Good," I whispered to the mirror. "The more they rush, the more they make mistakes." It was time to stop playing the blushing bride and start performing my actual job. The Caldwells believed I was a low-level data entry clerk for a logistics company. It was a convenient cover I had maintained to avoid the gold diggers that plagued my early 20s. In reality, I was the head of compliance investigation for Blackford Integrity Group. I did not just read spreadsheets. I hunted corporate fraud for a living, and I had never seen a sloppier operation than the one my fiancé was running. I sat in the darkness of the guest room and dialed a number I usually only called during a corporate crisis. Monica Shaw picked up on the second ring. She was not just my personal attorney. She was the woman who taught me how to gut a fraudulent contract without leaving a fingerprint. Haley Monica's voice was raspy with sleep, but instantly alert. "It is 3 in the morning. Please tell me you are not calling about a prenuptial disagreement. I need to activate the protocol." "Monica," I said, my voice steady. "The full asset protection suite. Identity theft. Coercion. Potential bank fraud involving a bridge loan. I am the target." There was a pause on the line, followed by the sound of a bedside lamp clicking on. "Talk to me," she said. "I am not going to freeze everything yet," I explained, typing furiously as I spoke. "If I lock the accounts now, they will know I am onto them and they will destroy the paper trail. I am just changing the keys. I worked through the night. I did not block Ethan's access, but I silently enabled two-factor authentication on every joint account routing the codes to my burner phone. I stripped his administrative rights from our smart home system. I logged every IP address that had accessed my credit report in the last 30 days. "You need to get him to commit to the document," Monica advised over the speakerphone. "If he forces you to sign physically, we need proof he intended to deceive you about the content. Do not just wait for the ambush. Invite it." I opened my email and composed a message to Ethan. I kept the tone sweet and submissive. "Ethan, I know I was silly at dinner. I want to help the family. Can you send me the final PDF of that liability form? I just want to read it so I feel safe signing it tomorrow." I hit send. It was a trap. If he sent the document, he was legally affirming that this was the contract. If he sent a fake version and then tried to make me sign a different one at the table, it was fraud by inducement. While I waited for his reply, I dug deeper into the G file. I cross-referenced the loan application number from the screenshots with public records. The Caldwells were applying for $5 million to develop a commercial complex called Riverfront Heights. I pulled the city planning records. The land for Riverfront Heights was not zoned for commercial use. It was protected wetlands. They were using a non-existent project to secure a loan they had no way of paying back, and they needed my clean credit to push the application through the automated underwriting system. "It is a Ponzi scheme." "Monica," I whispered, looking at the screen. "They are paying off old debts with new loans based on vaporware. Then we do not just walk away." "Haley," Monica said, her voice sharpening, "we bury them. I am bringing in a forensic accountant to trace the flow of funds. We need to prove where the previous loan money went." I leaned back in the chair. The sun was rising. I had a dress fitting in 4 hours. "I am going to host the signing," I said. "Ethan wants a quick signature. I will give him a ceremony. I want you there. I am hiring a neutral notary public who plays by the book, and I am going to invite the loan officer listed on this application. You are going to turn a signing meeting into a deposition, Monica noted with a hint of pride. I am calling it Operation White Dress. I said, they wanted a wedding. I am going to give them a funeral for their reputation. My phone pinged. It was an email from Ethan. Attached was a PDF titled Liability Waiver Final PDF. He took the bait, I said. Then, reel him in. Monica replied, I will see you tomorrow night. Wear something intimidating. I closed the laptop. The fear was gone entirely, now replaced by the cold, mechanical rhythm of an investigation. I was not going to be a victim. I was going to be the auditor. Ethan came down for breakfast with a bounce in his step that turned my stomach. He poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter, flashing that boyish grin that used to make my knees weak. Great news, babe, he said, blowing on the steam. Mom is setting up a little signing tonight, quick and dirty. Just get the paperwork out of the way so we can, finally relax before the big day. I did not look up from my toast. Actually, I was thinking we should do it somewhere neutral. I booked the private boardroom at the Fairmont downtown. I ordered catering. I want to make sure I am fully focused for you. I saw the flicker of annoyance in his eyes, but he masked it quickly. Oh, fancy, sure. If that makes you feel better, under the table, I sent a text to Bree. I want to make sure I do everything right so I do not embarrass the family. I have the papers ready, she replied in 3 seconds. Good girl. See you at 7. The trap was set. I arrived at the hotel at 6:45 in the evening. Gone were the soft cardigans and floral prints I usually wore to appease Diane. I wore a structured navy sheath dress and heels that clicked sharply against the marble floor. I looked like the head of compliance investigation, not the blushing bride. When the Caldwells arrived, they looked like they were attending a coronation. Diane was draped in cashmere, and Bree was already complaining about the valet parking. Then the door opened again, and Tessa walked in. Tessa is here because, well, she understands the project details if you have questions, Ethan said quickly, pulling out a chair for me. Of course, I said, my voice smooth. Hi, Tessa. I gestured to the woman sitting quietly in the corner. This is Monica. She is just a friend who helps me read through dense wedding contracts. She is just here to observe. Monica smiled pleasantly, adjusting her glasses. They barely glanced at her. To them, she was just another invisible servant. We sat down. The tension in the room was a physical weight. Let's get this over with, Diane said, checking her watch. Where is the signature page? Right here, I said. I slid a thick stack of documents across the polished table. Ethan grabbed them eagerly, uncapping his expensive fountain pen. He flipped to the back page, ready to sign. But then he stopped. He frowned. He flipped back to the front. What? What is this? Ethan asked, his voice dropping an octave. It is a request for verification. I answered calmly, clasping my hands on the table. Since I am assuming liability, I need to see the proofs. Specifically, I need the zoning permits for the Riverfront Heights project, the independent cash flow audit for Caldwell Holdings, and a signed declaration of no conflict of interest regarding your relationship with the loan officers. The room went deadly silent. Bree snatched the papers from Ethan. Are you joking? This is ridiculous. We do not have to show you our internal books. You do if you want me to co-sign a $5 million loan, I said. Ethan's face turned a mottled shade of red. He stood up, slamming his hand on the table. Haley, stop this. We are getting married in 48 hours. You are being paranoid and difficult. Just sign the damn paper. I cannot sign what I cannot verify. Ethan, I said, keeping my tone maddeningly even. You don't need to verify anything, he shouted, a vein throbbing in his neck. You just need to trust me. I am your husband. Do you have any idea how much pressure I am under? Just sign it for the record. Monica spoke up from the corner, her voice cutting through the noise like a razor. I am a licensed attorney in the state of Pennsylvania, and per the notice posted on the door when you entered, this meeting is being recorded for legal purposes. Mr. Caldwell, your attempt to coerce a signature without disclosure has been noted. Ethan froze. Diane looked at Monica, then at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Tessa started to back away toward the door. You set us up, Bree hissed. I stood up slowly. I did not look at the papers. I looked directly at Ethan. Before I sign anything, I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper but filling the silent room. I want everyone to hear. A little something I received yesterday. I pulled my phone from my pocket and placed it in the center of the table. I tapped the screen and the room filled with the sound of Ethan's voice. It was crisp and undeniable, amplified by the high-quality speakers of the conference phone. She is a starter wife, perfect for the credit score repair and the public image rehab. Give it 2 or 3 years. Get the assets legalized. And then we move on. Then came Tessa's laugh, shrill and mocking, echoing off the mahogany walls. I hit pause just as the recording ended. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. Diane sat frozen, her face draining of color until she looked like a wax statue. Tessa stared at the table, her hands trembling around her clutch, but it was Bree who broke the silence. She shot out of her chair so fast it tipped over backward with a crash. You absolute idiot, Bree screamed, turning on her brother. You recorded it. You sent a voice memo detailing the plan to the victim. How stupid are you? I thought I clicked your name, Ethan stammered, looking between his sister and me, sweat beading on his forehead. It was a mistake. Haley, babe, listen. That was just venting. It was a joke. Is the unauthorized credit check a joke too? I asked, my voice cutting through his panic. Because 10 minutes ago, my bank's fraud department received an automated flag regarding a soft pull on my credit report, the one initiated by Caldwell Holdings without my consent. Ethan's eyes widened. He realized the walls were not just closing in, they were crushing him. He looked for a scapegoat and found 2. It was Bree, Ethan shouted, pointing a shaking finger at his sister. She told me to push for the signature. She said we needed the liquidity by Friday or the payroll checks would bounce. I just did what she said. Do not dare pin this on me, Bree hissed, her composure fracturing completely. You are the CEO. It is your signature on the loan application. Ethan spun toward Tessa, who was trying to inch away from the table. And you said you handled the back end. You said you scrubbed the digital footprint so she would not see the inquiries. Tessa's face flushed crimson. She stood up, her voice rising to a shriek. Do not pin this on me. Ethan, you are the one who texted me the instruction to change her billing address to Bree's post office box. I have the messages saved. You changed my address, I asked, feigning shock, though I already knew. So I would not see the warnings he made me. Tessa yelled, throwing Ethan to the wolves to save her own career. The alliance was not just cracking, it was shattering into jagged pieces right in front of me. I reached into my portfolio and pulled out the timeline I had prepared. I slid it across the table. It was a beautiful, color-coded spreadsheet detailing every email, every unauthorized login, the flight confirmation for their Cabo trip, and the metadata from the voice memo. I am not jealous. Ethan, I said calmly, I am not an emotional, paranoid woman. I am an investigator, and this is my case file. Diane finally found her voice. She did not look ashamed. She looked lethal. She turned her cold gaze to Monica. You are recording this, Diane spat. That is wiretapping. That is illegal in Pennsylvania without 2-party consent. I will sue you for every penny you have and have you disbarred. Monica did not even blink. She simply slid a piece of paper forward. Actually, Mrs. Caldwell, If you read the sign-in sheet you signed at the concierge desk downstairs, and the notice posted on the door of this private room, you consented to audio and video recording for arbitration purposes. You waived your right to privacy when you entered my meeting. Diane snatched the paper, reading the fine print, her hands shaking with rage. Ethan slammed his fist on the table, desperate to regain control of a room he had lost the moment he walked in. "Who do you think you are?" he sneered, his face twisted into a mask of ugly entitlement. "You are nobody. Haley, you are a desperate little girl we picked up to fix a problem. You think you can threaten us?" "We are the Caldwells." I stood up. I looked him in the eye, and for the first time, I let the mask of the sweet fiancé drop completely. "I am not your fiancé," I said, my voice hard as steel. "I am the person protecting my identity from a conspiracy to commit credit fraud. And right now, I am the only reason the police are not waiting outside that door." The door burst open. 2 uniformed hotel security guards stepped in, looking alarmed by the shouting. "Is everything all right in here, ma'am?" one guard asked. Looking at me, "We are just finishing," I said. I looked down at my left hand. I slid the diamond engagement ring off my finger. It felt heavy, weighed down by 18 months of lies. I placed it gently on the center of the timeline document, right on top of the proof of his betrayal. "I think you will need to return this for the deposit," I said to Ethan. "You are going to need the cash for your legal defense. The fallout was not immediate fire. It was a cold, bureaucratic war. 2 days after the hotel confrontation, I received notice that Ethan had filed an emergency motion against me. The legal filing was a masterpiece of projection. It claimed I was suffering from acute emotional instability and obsessive paranoia designed to inflict reputational damage on the Caldwell family. He was trying to paint my investigation as the breakdown of a jilted bride. I did not waste time arguing with him in the press. Instead, I walked into the office of a court-certified forensic psychiatrist. I spent 4 hours answering questions and taking cognitive tests. I did not do it because I doubted my sanity. I did it to weaponize it. "You understand why I am here, Doctor," I said, sitting straight in the leather chair. "To refute the claim of hysteria, Doctor," Eris asked, looking over his glasses. "To create a baseline," I corrected him. "I need a sworn affidavit stating that I am fully competent, highly rational, and acting in self-defense. When they call me crazy, I want to hit them with a medical diagnosis of sanity." By the time I left his office, Monica had already filed a counter motion. We requested an emergency injunction to lock down my Social Security number. We petitioned the court to force the credit bureaus to freeze my reports and flag any attempt to use my identity as potential fraud. Then the cracks in the Caldwell fortress began to widen. "You are not going to believe this," Monica told me over the phone later that afternoon. "Bree just threw a grenade into her own bunker. It turns out Ethan is not the only one she was helping. We found discrepancies in the previous loan documents. Bree signed Diane's name on 3 separate guarantee agreements. She forged her mother's signature, I asked. Looking at the rain streaking my apartment window, she claims she had verbal permission. Monica laughed, a dry sound. But now that the ship is sinking, she is claiming Ethan forced her to do it. She is offering a deposition against him to save herself from a forgery charge. The betrayal did not stop there. An hour later, an encrypted email arrived for Monica from Tessa's personal attorney. The subject line was Cooperation Agreement. Tessa was terrified. She knew that as a licensed financial professional, her involvement in the unauthorized credit checks could land her in federal prison. She wants full immunity from civil litigation, Monica explained, reading the terms. In exchange, she will hand over the iMessage history where Ethan explicitly tells her to hide the paper trail and bypass the consent forms. No backroom deals, I said firmly. Tell her I will agree to a non-suit only if she testifies on the record. I want it sworn. I want it public. If she lies, the deal is void. The preliminary hearing for the restraining order took place in a small, fluorescent-lit courtroom 3 days later. It was quiet, sterile. Ethan stood on the other side of the aisle in a charcoal suit, looking like the picture of aggrieved innocence, but his hands were shaking. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with gray hair cut into a sharp bob, adjusted her glasses as she read the transcript of the voice memo. She looked at the timeline I had built. She looked at the affidavit from Dr. Aris. "Mr. Caldwell," the judge said, her voice devoid of warmth, "you are alleging that Ms. Grant is harassing you. Yet the evidence suggests a systematic attempt by you and your associates to defraud her. She is trying to ruin me," Ethan blurted out, stepping forward. His lawyer tried to grab his arm, but he shook him off. She is twisting everything I gave her, a life I brought her into my family. You tried to trick her into assuming $5 million of debt." "Sir," the judge noted, glancing at the file. "It was an investment," Ethan shouted, his face turning an ugly shade of red. "She was supposed to be my wife. That means she shares the burden. She owes me this after everything I bought for her. She owes me." The courtroom went silent. He had said the quiet part out loud. He did not see a partner. He saw an account receivable. "She owes you nothing, Mr. Caldwell," the judge said, banging her gavel once. "Order granted. You are to have no contact with the plaintiff. Any violation will result in immediate arrest." Ethan was ushered out by his lawyer, looking back at me with eyes full of hate. I did not look away. I did not flinch. As I walked out of the courthouse, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the state attorney general's office. I opened the email. "Case number 4920, formal investigation, opened regarding alleged loan fraud and identity theft." I stood on the concrete steps and took a deep breath. I did not feel happy. Happiness was too light a word. I felt weightless. It was the feeling of a fish that had been fighting against a line for miles, only to finally feel the hook snap and fall away from its lip. "It is done," I whispered to the cold city air. "Now, let them eat each other." The wedding venue was a restored industrial loft in downtown Pittsburgh with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the steel-gray river. I had invited both families for what I called a final closure meeting. I told them we needed to end things with dignity to avoid a public scandal. They took the bait because narcissists always believe they can talk their way out of a corner. Ethan arrived looking like a tragic hero. He wore a dark sweater and a look of practiced devastation. Diane clung to his arm, playing the heartbroken mother, while Bree stood a few feet away, checking her phone and trying to look uninvolved. They thought I was weak. They thought I had called them there to apologize or perhaps to beg for a reconciliation under the pressure of their social standing. I stood on the small stage where the band was supposed to play. I did not have a microphone, but the acoustics were perfect. I waited until they were all seated in the front row. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice steady and devoid of tears. "I gathered you here because the narrative needs to be corrected. This is not a postponement. This is a cancellation based on identity violation and forced debt signing." Ethan stood up, his face twisting into a mask of pity. "Haley, please, do not do this here. You are clearly unwell." I did not argue. I simply pressed a button on the remote in my hand. The large projection screen behind me lowered. The room dimmed. First came the voice memo. Ethan's voice boomed through the high-quality sound system, calling me a starter wife. Then came the email from the law firm. Then, the unauthorized credit inquiry logs. Finally, the screen displayed a boarding pass for a flight to Cabo San Lucas departing tomorrow with 2 names listed: Ethan Caldwell and Tessa Halbrook. Diane gasped. Bree looked at the floor. Ethan looked like he had been struck by lightning. "You," Ethan stammered, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You hacked my accounts. That is illegal." "Actually," a deep voice spoke from the back of the room. We all turned. A man in a gray suit stepped out of the shadows accompanied by a woman holding a tablet. "I am Mr. Henderson from the fraud department of First National Bank," the man said, walking toward the stage. "And this is Investigator Lewis. We were invited here by Ms. Grant's legal counsel, Mr. Caldwell. We have some urgent questions regarding the collateral listed on your recent bridge loan application, specifically the assets belonging to Ms. Grant that you claimed were yours." Ethan panicked. The victim act evaporated instantly. He lunged toward the stage, his eyes wild with fear. "Turn it off," he screamed, reaching for the remote. "Haley, turn it off right now." 2 private security guards I had hired stepped in front of me, blocking his path. Ethan slammed into them, bouncing back like a child throwing a tantrum. He looked frantic, sweaty, and ugly. The charm was gone. This was the real Ethan, a man who was terrified of consequences. Then the side door opened. Tessa Halbrook walked in. She looked pale but resolute. She did not look at Ethan. She walked straight to Investigator Lewis and handed her a thick stack of printed papers. "Tessa," Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. "What? What are you doing? I am not going to jail for you." "Ethan," Tessa said, her voice shaking but clear. "Here are the texts where he instructed me to forge the dates. He told me the bank would never check." Ethan froze. He looked at Diane, but she turned her head away. He looked at Bree, but she was already inching toward the exit. The Caldwell dynasty crumbled not with a bang, but with the shuffling of papers and the sound of a heavy door closing. I looked at them one last time. They were not monsters. They were just small, greedy people who thought they could eat me alive. I picked up the sample bridal bouquet that had been left on the chair. I looked at the white roses. Then I dropped them onto the empty seat next to Ethan. "I am not alone," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "I am not an asset you can leverage. I am the one who refused to sign." I walked off the stage. I walked past Ethan, who was now being questioned by the investigator. I walked past Diane, who was weeping silently into her hands. I pushed open the heavy steel doors and stepped out into the Pennsylvania twilight. The air was biting cold, the kind of cold that hurts your lungs. But it felt amazing. I pulled my coat tighter. I took my phone out of my pocket and navigated to Ethan's contact. I scrolled down and tapped block caller. I took a deep breath, filling my chest with the freezing clean air. For the first time in 18 months, I did not feel like I was holding my breath. I was free. Thank you so much for listening to my story on the Lily Revenge Stories channel. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below sharing your city or country so we can all connect. If you enjoyed watching the Caldwell family get exactly what they deserved, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and smash the hype button to help this story reach even more people.